Before discussing some of the content in the coming section, I want to talk a little bit about the genre itself, science fiction, space-related science fiction, and so on. This is a genre that sometimes gets, what do they call it, looked down upon by people who sort of believe that high art is better, or even realistic works are better, and for a number of reasons. But the key question here, and this is a discussion I was having with someone just last week, they would say, well, something needs to be practical, something needs to be relevant for it to have value. And my argument here is totally different, because in this contrast between the real and the imaginary, and even the wildly imaginary, like what happens with these works of science fiction, when we go into these levels of imagination, it sort of becomes really inspiring, right? Human imagination is infinite. That's a separate discussion. And so why should we be limited to this world of here and now, of things that we directly see? Why can't we just create these amazing worlds of imagination? And somebody would say, well, how is that useful? Even if we want to go by that logic, it is quite useful, because it inspires many people to create amazing things, right? There are many scientists, there are a few resources on that, and some people have done research who were inspired by science fiction, many engineers, many inventions that were inspired by science fiction itself, by these works of extreme imagination. So I believe that science fiction has a lot of power in terms of the ability to inspire. It can inspire works of science, works of culture, other works of culture, works of engineering, inventions, and so on, all outside the borders of the existing. Another aspect of this power of imagination, the infinite power of human imagination, and I'm talking about this now in order to argue for the value of science fiction, the cultural value of science fiction, the artistic value of science fiction. And this happens in one of the novels, I think it was the second one. If you create a character from your imagination, you start talking to it, you start adding dimensions to its existence, adding texture, complexity. What really differentiates this character from some other character alive with you in the world, right? So you can use this imagination to actually more or less create a life. And there is this idea in science fiction about world building, right? So you don't just create one life, you create a life, but you create lives, you create culture, you create worlds of ideas by limiting certain variables and varying others, right? So you can start thinking about, well, what would happen if the star were so and so, and what would happen if a culture evolved based on these other principles. And all of this opens great fields for science fiction, for art, for thinking, for philosophy, and we've seen that the three-body problem has had an impact on discussions about culture, philosophy, our existence in the world, morality, and so on. A very interesting point here is what is known as Sturgeon's law, and Sturgeon's law is actually funny, because Sturgeon is this sci-fi writer. It seems that some journalist or something asked him and said, well, don't you think that 90% of all science fiction is crap? And it might be valuable. Like a lot of science fiction is just cliches and repeated themes and so on. But the answer was interesting, in that he said, well, 90% of anything is crap. So this might work for science fiction as well. And this is an important idea. Science fiction might get a reputation of not being this high or interesting form of art, but it is. And the three-body problem is a great example on that.